Welcome back, GoatGuns fans. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some airbrush options. A lot of the people in this community are just trying to figure out how they want to go about spraying. The Tamiya spray paints are a really good option if you don't have a full airbrush setup, but I want to just go over a couple of basics to get you started. And I got myself a new airbrush today, which is a budget one, and I'm going to talk through that as well. Anyway, if you haven't used Tamiya, they're really good, but I want to discuss a little bit of the difference between this and why an airbrush is going to be your best friend if you decide you want to customize your own models, especially if you're going to be using camo kits or trying to do fine detail items. Here we go. Okay, so I wanted to start off with just a basic trigger control style. This is adjustable. It's the only way to go. Idea is really simple. Your air goes in. When you depress this, it opens the valve, which allows air to come up. Your needle is what allows the air and the paint to come out. So when you push this down, air starts flowing. When you pull this back, your needle retracts. The further back your needle goes, the more volume comes out. Pretty simple. Most important thing about this kind is to make sure that you are taking it apart periodically to clean it, that when you clear your area down in there and you get all the paint out, that you pull your needle completely out, clean your needle, and then make sure that you back pressure clean everything else in there. Now, there's a lot of videos out there that go into more detail about that. That's not what this is about. I just want to talk about kind of where you might want to start. Now, I do have a needle cap on this one, but I do take them off most of the time when I'm painting, especially as if you get any buildup in there at all, it will cause spider webs or clogging and whatnot. So that's just to protect the needle for now. This is the Iwata TRN2. This is a great one, fairly inexpensive. You're around $130 to $150 depending on where you find it. The problem that I run into is the paint that I use is hardcore compared to your typical like modeling paint. And so I'm in the process of rebuilding this one. I'm almost there, but I'm having to order parts and figure out which ones to replace. And there are a ton of parts that go up into here and they go up into each channel. Take really, really good care of your brush, especially if you buy expensive ones. In my case, I already know that I have to deal with corrosive stuff. I use acetone, things like that, so it's part of the game. But this is a great one, and it is going to give you multiple needle cap sizes as well. But it's adjustable. It comes with a cap that goes on the back end, which allows you to adjust the distance of travel here. I don't typically use it, but it is really helpful if you're trying to get a consistent stop point. It'll stop you so that you can't get more pressure than that out at whatever project you're working on. Now, these are the two that I would typically recommend for anybody that is doing models and things like that. If you're doing a little bit larger products, you would consider maybe a little mini HVLP like this Posh right here. I also have one like this right here that does a little bit larger items as well. So sometimes I do real firearms. It's going to put out a lot more volume than you need, but you can get these for a pretty good price as well. This one's around $100, but it holds a lot of paint. Right now I've got alcohol in there, which is a great way to just keep it clean, but I'm also going to demonstrate a little bit of spray pattern. So if you're looking at something like this, you can get a tremendous amount of volume, and you have basically your trigger stop here on this one. It's going to determine how far you can pull your trigger back, and I can't even get any fluid out. So if I go my fluid all the way back, it's going to spray right there, see? So I'm just going to get that nice and set to where I want it. Cool. So again, it's not going to press anything out until the trigger hits the point where it wants to spray. So it's going to give you a little stop point. And when you hit that stop point, then it'll start spraying. In this case, this is your pattern. So if I have this all the way open, you're gonna see it's gonna give me a nice wide pattern, and I can spray really well. Now you can 100% do larger items if you're doing GoatGuns and you wanna spray a lot. I'm gonna explain why this and your spray cans give you a hard time. Now if I go all the way down, I can get my pattern to a really small circle. But you see how much comes out? You have to really adjust your volume down, but it's not really designed for that. So this is a great little gun. This one is a great little gun just for basic projects, but they're gonna be really for larger projects. So let's talk about what you really wanna stay focused on. And I just wanted to show that just so you have an idea. And the reason is because this is where you run into issues with this kind of paint. So it doesn't have the ability to really control the flow. So when you spray it out, you can immediately see the volume. That's just too much volume. If I get it too far back, I can get a much less volume, but it doesn't give you a lot of control. So when you're doing something like GoatGuns, where you're doing small parts, miniatures, and you need to get into all the cracks and the crevices, and for example, this muzzle device for the AK-12, getting inside of all of that, it's very difficult to do without having overflow. So let's talk about where we want to be. We're going to use this one. This is the one I use a lot. We're going to add a little alcohol. Okay, so we're going to add a little alcohol right here. Now, on Amazon, you can find a lot of really good deals with small compressors that will work totally fine for these smaller projects. I'm using a huge compressor. I've got this all connected. But you can get these little compressor kits and they work just fine. So here, you're going to see how well I can control. So when I want to spray these little detail parts, I can get all into the nooks and crannies. And when I'm ready to spray the body, now the needle size that I'm using in this one, I think is a 3 on this one. So you can see how skinny the line is. The wider the line with good pressure, the better coverage you're going to get. So for an AK-12, for example, or if I'm spraying this mag, I'm going to basically be hitting like 3 or 4 passes to get this mag, but you can see just how fine the paint is so that you retain all of your details. Everything goes back together. I don't have to worry about it scratching or chipping, and that's why I use it. So let's get into this new one. Get all that alcohol out. Alcohol is great to practice your sprays with on a piece of cardboard because as you can see it and it dries up and it doesn't hurt your airbrush and there's virtually no cleanup. So it's a great way to practice. I highly encourage that. Okay, so this is a budget gun. And I got this because I am rebuilding my TRN for my Wada, which I really like, but I'm not quite there yet. And I need to replace this one because, quite honestly, I have worked this thing to death and I need something that's going to give me better options. So here is the one that I have. It is the X-Dovet dual action trigger. Gets really good reviews. Now I'm going to tell you right now, the paint that I'm using, the dual mixed paint, and then cleaning up with acetone, and I use Brake Clean, the non-chlorinated version, which is the better option to go, but this works really good for Duracoat. It's going to wear the brush out, and it just is the nature of the beast for these brushes. So let's talk about this. I'm going to go through some of the things to look at here and why I like this setup, and then we're going to spray it. Okay, so let's dig in. So this particular one, I don't need this hose, although it's always nice to have an extra. It does come with an adapter, which is good because it brings you down from a full-size hose to the smaller hose, which is typically what you're going to use for most of your airbrushes. So you can see I have a set of quick release, and these pieces here are designed to screw straight on. So what you would do is you would put a quick release on the other end. So I have these quick release setups so that they work here, like that. And so I use this in place of these so that I can just quick release my airbrushes. Now you can use the airbrush the way it is if you're going to leave it connected all the time. I do not, because I switch back and forth constantly. So you can just screw it in like that if you want to with a little Teflon. You're good to go. These come with little rubber washers in there, but I recommend a little Teflon. So let's go over it. Comes with a brush kit. This is really actually good because some of them don't come with them, some of them do, whatever. This is great for all the different tubes for cleaning stuff out. The brushes are really, really nice to get down the piping to make sure that any leftover paint gets pulled out. Great to have. This particular kit I got specifically because it has a 0.8. So you have a 0.8 and you have a 0.5, and then the one that comes in it is the point, I think on this one, a 0.2. So what I mean by that is the needle size. So you have 3 different needles. One that's installed already, which is the smaller one. The 0.5 is actually great for GoatGuns. The 0.8 will also work for GoatGuns, but it's going to be a much higher volume. So for example, this is 0.8, so it's going to give me a lot more volume. Now, not quite the same because it's mini HVLP, so the pressure is going to come out a lot more on it. We're going to go through it. We're going to spray it. So this actually comes with multiple containers. This is fantastic. So this is probably the size that most people need. And then you've got a plastic one. Now, I'm going to test the plastic one personally. I don't know if it will hold up to Duracoat and then spraying with acetone or brake cleaner. So we're going to test that, but this is really good for basic modeling paints. Same thing here. You've got another one that is huge. This is really awesome. I love this, but again, I have to test it to see if it's going to hold up. Some plastics will literally just melt. That's bad. So this is a really good one for your smaller stuff. Now when I'm spraying any larger pieces, I'm going to be using this one. This is nice and thick. It's very heavy, which is great. In this case, it's actually going to screw right into the top. And you screw them in this way, and you just have your basic gravity feed. Okay. Now functionality of this in here is similar to this. The difference is when you pull this trigger, there's a tube in here, and that tube actually pushes the plunger down, whereas in this one, you're manually pushing the plunger down. This is great, but when you're doing larger sets, like I'm doing, you know, sometimes 5 or 6 full sets at a time, this is much less fatigue. It's easier to control. I can really easily go. And as I was stating on the TRN2, it has this piece here. And all I'm doing is keeping me from being able to pull the trigger back. So you'll see here as I move this back, the trigger keeps going back. And that is your volume. That's how much is coming out. Now, on this kind of airbrush, when I manage the trigger, it's going to manage how much comes out. It's also going to manage the size of the dot. So we're going to talk about that. This one actually has a volume control right here. So it actually will stop the amount of paint that's coming out of the needle. Now I tend to rock this fully open. That's just the way that I do it. So we're going to run this and see how it does. So there you go, your X-Dovit. Never heard of them, but they did get good reviews. Let's see, what else you got in here? This is another hose quick connect type. So in this, it won't work, but if you have like a rubberized hose that slips over the end of that, this is another way to connect it. Don't ever use those. And then there's another one. Let's see what we got here. What type do we have? Oh, this is just replacement parts. So these are extra parts right here. So that's great. You have a little micro one. Bro, let me just tell you, this whole thing was like 40 bucks, and I've got a tiny little one, a mid-size one, 2 plastic options, and the larger one, which is going to stay on most of the time for me. plus what feels to be a really nice heavy kit and an adjustable back. This is amazing. One thing I will tell you about these, for most uses, totally fine. Alcohol is not going to hurt this, whatever. But if I'm using acetone, if I get acetone on this and put my finger on it and take it off, it's going to actually melt my fingerprint into the plastic. A way that I avoid that is that I'll actually remove this piece. I don't use this. I'm actually going to take it off, and I'll show you that. I will spray this with Duracoat, and once it dries, it's fine. I can get acetone on it all day long, and it won't bother me anymore. So let's break this down. So let's get out our 2 needles. I don't need all these cups because I'm not going to be using them. Let's get this one goes back in there. And then we'll do all that. I'm going to set this up, and then we're going to spray a couple of demo sprays. Okay, so this is our basic setup. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it's a 2 in here or a 0.2 in here. Maybe a 0.3, but I can't remember exactly. To go look it up. First things first, I need to get my quick attach on here. Quick release, quick attach, whichever. So I'm going to use a little Teflon tape. This particular one doesn't have the O-ring in it. It should be all right. We're just testing it. But I would recommend getting yourself an O-ring kit, which is always good to have. I'm going to throw a little Teflon on here, like so. You don't need a lot. Push it on. That should be enough to get us going. Yeah, I can hear. Got a little bit of a leak. It's going to do better with an O-ring, but that's fine. This will work with what we need. So, you can add a little bit more Teflon or put the O-ring in there, which is what I would recommend. So here's what we're going to do. Let's connect this. I'm going to add a little alcohol, just a little bit, like that. Now, one of the things that's really different about a trigger versus this kind of trigger is that this trigger starts your air and then you pull back, which then opens the channel, allowing paint to flow out of the end. This one, the air is already here, so this trigger is pulling the brush back, the tip back for you. Actually, let me show you. So you can see your needle there. There we go. You can see it. It's spraying my hand as I pull it out, like that. See? Another great reason to use alcohol. So let's see what we got here. So full open. Now, if I use this controller while you're learning to control, you can get it down to where it only, no matter how hard I push, it only lets me get that out. So if you're trying to do a design, it's a great way to go. But in this particular case, we're spraying. So this is good. So if you're doing small parts, this will be good. That'll work just fine. What we're going to do is switch out the needle. So the needle has multiple parts, and this is something I need you to pay attention to. 05 and 08. You cannot just switch the needle out. I'm going to jump to an 08 just because we're going to go from the small one to the large one so you can really see the difference. But here's why this is really important. This end, now they don't all come like this. Some of them will just have just a different cap to switch out, but in this particular piece, it's the whole unit. See? So there's your cap. And there's this piece. So they just go in like this. So this is your needle channel. You can see there. And then your cap. And the reason it's so important that these match up is because that needle channel fits right in the end of the cap. And if you have the wrong sizes matched up, your spray will either not work at all or it'll be a hot mess. So we're going to switch this out. And I'm doing it so you can see the needle. There, right? You can see that this piece all came out here. It's going to be really important. Actually, let's get that in, get this out. There we go. It's going to be really important that you keep your needle and your tips all together. The only thing I wish that they did differently is they provided the other one of these, because you're going to put these in here like this so you don't lose them. And then you're going to forget what's in there. At some point, if you have a bunch of airbrushes like I do, I've got 6 or 7 boxes of different airbrushes with different needles, but we're going to keep these together. I'm going to pull the 0.8. I'm going to pull this bad boy out. It's got a tip protector on it. And this is what I'm going to show you here. Look at the difference. See how sharp that small one is? Really, really sharp. It's also really, really easy to bend, so it's important that you protect it. This protector is for the 0.8, but it should at least get us on there. We're going to go ahead and drop it in the tube. And the easiest thing to remember here is that we switched out the 0.8, so we have both of these parts together. So at a bare minimum, we know these go together, but we're going to probably want to find a better way to mark those. And in my case, I'm probably just going to use an old set that I have and relabel them. All right, so let's go ahead and get this tip on. Which, see what I just did there? Not paying attention. This is the fatter one. So I'm going to get this in, and you can see how the needle tip, I'm just trying to get it, there you go. The needle tip just comes out of the end for you. That's what we want. If we use the wrong one, you're going to see the tip is so little that the needle doesn't even touch the tip, so it won't even go in all the way. So it's really important that we keep the right parts together. Now, if you don't buy a set with triples, it's only going to come with one, and that's totally fine. Obviously, that'll make life easier for you. We're going to go ahead and put this back in. Now, see, some of them will come with that other piece. Well, you'll have to use a tool to take it out, but this is kind of cool. You only have to pull the knurled knob off. At least feels like everything's going to work. The outside diameter is the same, so it goes in. We're going to make sure that it's fully seated. I'm going to screw this in, and then we'll see that our needle tip is there. See it? The spear? All right. Let's give it a test. As I said, I've not used this one, so this is all testing. And what we should get there is I can get a, you see I can't get a fine, I'm going to go real light. That's as fine as I can get, which is almost as wide as the wide on that. This is why you want to use the 0.8 when you're doing large projects. See how much I can cover with that? That's crazy. So there you go. There's your 0.8 compared to the smaller needle size, and you could go somewhere in between. You may find one that only has a 0.5. If you like this kit, which I really do so far, then that 0.8 is going to be what I use when I'm doing my main body parts. And in my case, instead of switching the needles back and forth when I'm doing smaller details, I'm just going to use this guy. So when I want to get in all the little stuff. But I'm telling you, when you want to go coat something like this 0.8, it's going to be small enough where I can still and shoot in there, and shoot in there, and shoot in there, and then I use my dowel rods. But then I'm going to be able to go boom, 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 and cover the whole thing in one shot, which is really great. Same thing with the mags. I'm making it like, and I'm covered. So when you jump from this size, this tiny little one, and I don't mean the size of this, but the actual needle, I have a fine needle in here. When you jump from this size to this size, it takes practice. So you got to get real used to what this volume is going to be, or you're going to end up with these blobs. You can see even still, see those blobs? Those are the blobs that end up on your paint. This one, even though we were wider out, it's thick, but this paint, it's still actually still a little bit wet, but it is going to be okay, but it's going to be really hard to get those fine details. So I'm highly recommending that we get you upgraded to a small air compressor system and then a nice trigger brush like this, or a bare minimum, something like this. The 3 sizes is awesome. Depends on how you like to work. This kit's going to come with everything that you need to get started. Aside from, I would recommend like a quick release setup, which is fairly inexpensive, like less than $10 for that setup, which really makes your life easier. And then of course, you're going to might need some couplers. In my case, I have this set up. So this basically is catching a lot of the moisture from my compressor. A quick release here. This is the pressure regulator, which, as you can see, has that reducer, which I was talking about before. This kind of guy right here. This reducer is actually what I'm using here. And then that is what's going into this little braided hose, which maybe it's time to replace the hose, but so far everything's great. In case you're wondering, this, put all this down, this is also an additional moisture trap. Moisture is your #1 killer. And if you're using a small compressor that has to kick on a lot and it gets warm, you're gonna wanna make sure that you're protecting your end result paint so that moisture isn't getting into there. So I have several different stops on the way, but this is a really nice piece on the end. You can see in my larger setup, I have this bigger one because I'm typically going to be pushing more volume through this. So if I'm doing small touch-up paint jobs or something like that, that's what I would use this for. But there you go. 0.8, high volume, gonna get you a large area of coverage. You go down to your 0.5, or in this case, the 0.2, and it's gonna give you smaller details. So practice with what works best for you. Highly recommend a little alcohol. Boom, boom, boom. You spray it out, keeps your brush clean anyway. Dries, goes away, and it allows you to practice and play around with it. I hope that helps. Folks, I really appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Check out my comments below because I'm going to add these links for you if you want to buy something. Those are always good. It's going to go through Amazon links regardless. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking it out. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Peace.